Good afternoon, students. Today we're going to talk about evaluating expressions. So go ahead and make sure right now that you title the next page in your notebook, Evaluating Expressions. And whatever page this is on in your notebook, you are updating your table of contents in the front of your notebook with this title. So go ahead and take a moment to do that. And once you are done with that, there are kind of a couple of things I need to define and remind you of before we move on to actually solving the mathematical problems. So the first thing is when we use this word evaluate means that we are going to input and solve. So an expression is a mathematical statement, and we're going to be looking at algebraic expressions. And so what's going to happen is we're going to be given what our variable is equivalent to. So we might have something that says like x equals or a equals, and they'll tell us what number that we're going to input and solve into the expression. And we'll figure out what is it equivalent to when we input and solve. The other thing we need to remind ourselves of is when we do these kinds of problems, we need to follow the integer rules and we need to follow the order of operations, or our PEMDAS acronym. So the majority of these problems are pretty straightforward because it's essentially like an order of operations problem, except they tell us kind of what to plug in for certain numbers instead of them just giving us the numbers like an order of operations problem. So it's bringing the pre-algebra into this order of operations concept that we've already practiced. So we're going to solve three different problems, or we're going to evaluate three different expressions. The first that we are going to evaluate is we're going to evaluate with the letter A for the variable, and we're going to evaluate two expressions where A is equal to -3. So the first two that we are going to do are here. So if you want to take a moment to write down that A is going to be equivalent to -3, write down the two expressions, and then I would just kind of split, don't split your page in half all the way, but just kind of draw a line down for maybe like 7 or 8 lines in your notebook and then stop. You can always, if you need more space, you can continue the line. But once you have that set up, we're going to go ahead and evaluate. So I'll give you a moment to pause and set this up. Okay, so let's evaluate. Let's look at this one first, 3a plus 3. So the biggest thing we need to remember is when we have a number next to a letter, when we have a coefficient next to a variable, if we use the correct mathematical terms, the math that is involved is to multiply. So when we evaluate with -3, we are not just going to place this -3 in to A and it be like, oh, this magically turns into like -33. No, what we're really doing is we're doing 3 times -3, and I'm just going to put parentheses around it because it's a negative. So I want to just isolate that negative, plus the number 3. So now we have an order of operations problem. So the order of operations problem that we have is the following: 3 times -3 plus 3. And so if we solve this using our order of operations, we're going to multiply and then add. So if we multiply 3 times -3, that would make -9. And -9 plus 3 is the last step. And -9 plus 3 is going to be -6. In the next expression, we have -4a minus 12 plus a. So when we input a here, it's going to look something like this. So when we plug in -3, we can plug it in from the start, or if we want to combine like terms and simplify this expression, we can do that too. I'm going to simplify the expression just for the sake of practice. So we can combine -4a and plus a. This is the same thing as like 1a. So -4 plus 1 would be -3a. And then we're going to keep the minus 12. And so if I plug in -3, I have -3 times -3, because that's what I'm plugging in, minus 12. So if I follow my order of operations, I need to do the multiplication before the subtraction. So when we multiply, -3 times -3 would be +9. And then we have 9 minus 12, which ends up getting -3. So you'll see when we evaluate an expression, we simply plug in what the variable is equivalent to, and then we solve like an order of operations problem. Let's do one more, and this time let's have 2 variables in the mix. So we're going to evaluate with 2 variables. So underneath kind of where you had those problems, you can draw yourself a line. And then for the rest of the page, you can set up the following. So go ahead and take a moment to pause and kind of set up this last problem. All right, so we're going to evaluate the expression negative c plus 3b plus bc when b is equal to 10 and c is equal to negative 1. So if I plug in all of these, there's nothing that I can combine like terms wise. I'm just going to plug them in. I have negative 1. That's a little tricky. So I'm going to put that in parentheses, plus 3 times 10, because b is equivalent to 10, plus, remember when two things are right next to each other, it means to multiply, plus 10 times negative 1. Okay, now I'm going to kind of go through and solve my order of operations problem. So I need to do all of these small multiplication problems before I do my adding. So I have a negative on the outside here, but I also have a negative on the inside here. So this is like the same thing as like negative 1 or negative 1 times negative 1. So these negatives essentially cancel out, and this is going to be positive 1. So we have positive 1 plus 3 times 10, which is 30, plus 10 times negative 1, which would be negative 10. And if I was to simplify all of these, 1 plus 30 is 31. 31 plus a negative 10 is the same thing as like subtracting a 10. So 31 minus 10 is going to be equivalent to 21. So when we evaluate this expression with b and c as 10 and negative 1, it ends up getting 21. So again, all we do when we evaluate expressions is we input and we solve. We input into the problem and then we solve using our order of operations problems and our integer rules. If this is the second time watching the video and you're ready to move on to the practice questions, you have 3 practice questions today. The practice questions are the following. Okay, so you have 3 different expressions you need to evaluate. Number 1 is when a is equivalent to 12, you have 1 over a plus 1 over 2. So you'll input that and it'll be like a fraction addition problem. Then you have when b is equivalent to negative 6, you have b to the power of 2 plus 15. And then you have when c is 11 and d is 1/2, you have the expression 3c minus 14d. So it's incorporating some integers and some fractions. So make sure you try them out. Check your answers in the table of contents. Make sure you simplify all the way, especially for number 1, to make sure you have the right answer that matches the table of contents. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in class or send me a message. And I hope wherever you are in the world, especially if you're watching this not somewhere in America, if you're somewhere exciting, I hope you're having a good day. And if you're watching this from your bedroom, just chilling at home, I also hope you have a good day. Wherever you are in the world, have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.